can't stand to fly.
Boop, boop, boop.
I'm not that naive.
Do, 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 do.
I forget the lyrics, but I
Boop,
know
boop,
the song is called Superman.
boop, boop.
Hello and welcome to Flop Shop. I'm Cormac Duff, and this is my fiance, Isadora Lamego.
Boop, 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 boop.
Isadora has been replaced by a robot for it says boop for the duration of this episode.
That's, that's the entirety of my personality, actually.
Yeah,
I could
exactly.
actually spend the rest of our soon to be married life just saying boop consistently, and you'd
Oh,
be like, there is nothing wrong here.
yeah, I mean, people like R2D2 and he only says boop.
No, but considering how much I say boop a day, like I could just spend the rest of our lives just saying boop, and you'd be like, no, that's Isadora. She hasn't been replaced by a robot.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you could have like a stroke and only be able to say boop and I wouldn't notice for like a week.
To be fair, I communicate very well with my boops. Like, boop, boop.
Perfect. So today, what film are we talking about, Isadora? Drum roll.
The not bad Justice League, the not
Yes.
crap one.
It's the Snyder cut of the Justice League. It does not suck. Isadora, did you like it?
Yes, and then I was personally offended, attacked, and aghast that it took them this long to give me this movie. Like, I felt personally attacked. I felt like DC was targeting me specifically
Hmm.
because it was so good, and I don't understand how someone ever thought that getting Joss Whedon, who honestly has had a dramatic career decline in his quality of work. Like, I do not understand why they thought it was like a good idea to bring him in and change things at all.
Yeah. So in this film, we're going to be talking about how Warner Brothers took a good movie, made it a bad movie, and made it back into a good movie again. So this
Yeah.
is Zack Snyder's Justice League. Okay, so for our viewer who has been living under a rock, so we have so far your mom, and our rock viewer, and I think that's about it. Um, who tell us what is the difference between Marvel and DC when it comes to comic books and superheroes?
Mm, well, recently, I guess the weird thing is that DC, like Marvel was so successful at making their superhero franchise, right? But part of the reason that Marvel's so successful is they have good comedic timing, they're lighthearted, they tend to have like pretty good cinematic perspective on their movies in terms of like shots chosen and things. And then DC was like, let's do that, but grungy and dark. And it
Yeah,
hasn't gone well for them.
yeah. So in the past, so DC have these kind of famous golden age superheroes like Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and Marvel have like Iron Man, Captain America, Thor.
And DC
And
heroes are better. Like that's the thing that I still to this day don't get. This should have been like a slam dunk.
yeah, yeah, I'd say like especially when it comes to like villains, Batman has better villains. So with with all of the DC superhero film rights belong to Warner Brothers, which is like a single studio, and it's an absolute boon for them because these are like some of the most recognizable characters in cinema history, and they've had a lot of success making them over the years. You know, there's successful Superman movies in the 70s, Batman movies in the 80s and 90s, and then the Christopher Nolan Batman movies in the like 2000s, which were incredible.
Except
Uh,
number three. I stand by that number three was overhyped and had incredibly poor pacing.
Yeah. So in 2012, the Dark Knight Rises came out, which was a bit of a letdown. And the same year, Avengers comes out, which is all these Marvel characters in a super kind of light, rompy movie that makes $1.2 billion, more than a Batman movie.
Mhm.
And suddenly everyone wants to make a cinematic universe movie where you take a bunch of characters from a bunch of different movies and just land them together in one movie and hope that it makes money. So DC wanted to do this, and you had this with Universal as well. They wanted to make like a shared universe of monster movies. So they had
Oh
like
yeah, with
Tom
the
Cruise in a mummy
mummy.
movie.
Jesus. Well, I don't understand why that was a good idea ever.
Like he wasn't even a mummy. He's just some guy who kills a mummy. Like what? Like what was their plan?
I don't know. Like I actually don't understand. Okay, the thing that's hard for me though is like you think DC would have been successful making a cinematic universe just because literally the Justice League in my mind is the iconic cinematic universe. Like I grew up watching the Justice League animated series and it was a genuinely good cartoon. Like children, well not, I guess I'm not a child anymore, but people my age liked DC. We grew up with like the Teen Titans, fantastic cartoon, like the Justice League animated series, fantastic, like the Batman animated series, fantastic, the Superman animated series, fantastic. This really should have been the frickin' slam dunk.
Yeah, on paper, they've much more recognizable superheroes. Like I was watching The 40-Year-Old Virgin a few years ago, and there was one of the jokes which is like it hasn't dated very well as a film. One of the jokes that dated terribly is that Steve Carell's girlfriend is making fun about how lame Iron Man is, and I was like, this came out 4 years before the Iron Man movie, and he became like really
Yeah,
cool.
Iron Man
But like Iron Man
used
was
to
not a
be lame.
recognizable character. He's basically just like a knockoff Batman in a metal suit, as far as most people were concerned. So.
Yeah, I think what Marvel did do is they got some pretty good actors to be the characters.
Mhm.
Like Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman like was a controversial choice when she was chosen. I do think she looks like Wonder Woman though, you know?
I think she looks like what you'd imagine Wonder Woman to be.
But
Um,
I'm still not the biggest fan of Batfleck. I know that you actually ended up liking him a bit during the Snyder cuts.
yeah, so I'll go into that a little bit more. So this wasn't the first time DC tried to make a Justice League film. George Romero, the director of Mad Max Fury Road, was actually given $220 million to make a Justice League film about a decade ago. But the plug was pulled on it because Christopher Nolan said, if you make this movie, I'm going to stop making my Batman movies.
Christopher Nolan.
And guess who they cast as Batman? I'll give you a clue, it wasn't Christian Bale.
Ooh.
It was America's best up and coming cannibal actor, Armie Hammer.
You know, when you said cannibal, I was like, oh, my fave, the guy who plays Hannibal in the Hannibal series.
I'm like, no, the actual cannibal.
Mass Mikkelsen. Mass Mikkelsen, yes. I was like, Mass Mikkelsen. He'd be a great Batman.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, so basically Avengers came out, directed by Joss Whedon. It's this kind of super happy, fun, light-hearted action movie. Everyone wants to do one. And meanwhile,
Before Joss Whedon's career got destroyed. This was pre controversy.
yes, exactly. So pre-controversy. And meanwhile, DC are like, oh my God, what are we going to do with our superhero movie? So next year they bring out they have Zack Snyder, who's most famous for directing 300. He has achieved kind of some critical success directing Watchmen, and then he brings out a Superman movie a year
I
after.
like his movies, by the way, like quite controversially. I'm actually like a bit of a Zack Snyder fan.
Yeah, no, I like his movies too, but I didn't like Man of Steel that much. I felt it was so Man of Steel comes out a year after Avengers and
Man of
after the
Steel's too
Batman
dark.
trilogy ends. And it's kind of produced by Christopher Nolan and it's trying to ape Batman, the Dark Knight's kind of somber, grungy vibe, but
They
I wasn't a huge fan.
So I think that my issue with the way Superman was done, and probably thing is that Marvel became so successful so early with the Captain America movie, and the way they portrayed Captain America was in many ways the way Golden Age Superman is portrayed. You know, that kind of wholesome American pie, like, I have a bit of angst, but really I'm just a nice guy raised in middle America and I've come to try and help the world, I got raised by farmer parents.
Yeah, it's truth, justice, the American way.
Yeah, and the hard thing is like the movie it's weird because I am actually a pretty big Zack Snyder fan, but his Superman was probably one of his few movies that I really didn't like because it went too dark.
Yeah, I feel it didn't suit the character. I liked it. It would have worked better as a Batman movie. I think he really wanted to make a Batman movie, and he tried to make Superman as dark as possible, and it didn't quite work. And he got his wish to make a Batman movie when Man of Steel didn't make a huge amount of money, so they didn't greenlight Man of Steel 2. But even like immediately after the Christopher Nolan trilogy of Batman movies came out, they're like, well, we need to make another Batman movie right away. So they made Batman versus Superman: Dawn of Justice, which came out in 2016.
I'm
And
really hoping there's a secret Dawn of Justice cut that
there
we've
is
just.
a secret Dawn of Justice director's cut. It's yeah, it's I really think we should review it. It's half an hour longer because I hated that movie. I thought it
I
was
hated that movie, but
like I
the
liked it
thing
more than
is,
Man of Steel, but I thought it was still really bad considering the amount of talent they had.
I thought I was going to watch the Whedon cut. Sorry, not the Whedon cut. I thought I was going to watch the Snyder cut of the Justice League movie and hate it. But I literally have had my mind change so hard by that cut that now I'm like, damn it, I might actually love the like director's cut of Batman versus Superman.
Yeah, so Batman versus Superman came out, and the character motivations didn't make sense. It was very muddled. It was very kind of grim dark. Everybody
Edgy
hated
Batman
it.
uses a fake gun.
Yeah, and later that year, Suicide Squad came out, which people hated even more. So it was a really bad year for DC. So
And now
they
they're
were
repeating everything. There's a new Batman, there's a new Suicide Squad.
yeah, exactly. They've rebooted everything. They were so sure that this movie was going to be a hit that when Batman vs Superman was coming out, they were already filming Justice League, and they gave Justice League a huge budget. It was somewhere between 300 and 400 million dollars. Um, and it was so expensive that they wanted to split it up into two movies, like Harry Potter or Twilight style, because they wanted to make their money back on it.
That actually
Um,
might have been a good idea for
well,
like,
considering the cut that we watched was 4 hours long, it might have worked.
yeah, they should have actually just done part one and part two and like released the Snyder cuts. Would have been
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah. Um, so so basically, Batman vs Superman got a terrible reception from fans and critics, and was underwhelming at the box office. So everyone at DC panicked, and they're like, "Oh my God, this Justice League film we're making is going to be an absolute bomb. It's going to do worse than this one. We're going to lose a ton of money." Um, and we need to go back to the drawing board. And at the same time, the idea of making a two-part movie, they went away from that because whereas it made a lot of money for Harry Potter and for Twilight, people were starting to get tired of it around the time that the Hunger Games was split up into two parts for the last book.
I cried
And
during Harry Potter part two hysterically when
I just
Snape
didn't watch it
died.
because I was like, I thought it was really cynical. They're splitting up the last book into two parts, and it doesn't suit the pacing at all because, like, the entire second, part two is just like a battle scene.
I know, but it like actually in my mind they're like two different movies, and like, ugh, I know that's probably horrifically cynical, but I loved that it was two parts. Like I actually basically disliked the vast majority of the Harry, and I'm a gigantic Harry Potter fan, but I disliked almost every single movie until they split it up into two parts in seven because they finally had enough time to give me like some of the money shot scenes that I really wanted.
Yeah, no, and yeah, I think one of the advantages of giving a two-part movie for this meant that you'd have more time to explore the characters. One of the reasons Batman vs Superman got such poor reception is because the studio cut out 30 minutes of Snyder's cut, and of course they didn't cut out action scenes because those are the scenes that cost the most money. They cut out scenes that like to develop character and make you care about the people, so that when like a big character, spoiler alert, dies at the climax of the movie, you don't really care and you don't really want to watch the next one. Like I just stopped watching DC movies after this came out.
Yeah. Also, I ended up okay. I hated a certain amount of the characters in the Joss Whedon version of Justice League. Like, I wasn't particularly invested in Aquaman. Like, I don't know what Snyder did, but I ended up loving Aquaman. I was like the biggest fan of the Flash. Ended up loving the Flash in this movie, and also Cyborg. I like did not like Cyborg in the first movie, and now with the like Snyder cut. He was such a compelling and good character, and he had such like a great arc. I was like, Cyborg was robbed.
Yeah, so I read an interview with Chris Terrio, who wrote the script for Justice League, and Cyborg is the main character of the film, as far as he's concerned. Like he's the person who goes through the most um, change through the film. He is the most compelling arc. And when this film came out in 2017, this was pre-Black Panther, so he would have been the first kind of high-profile black superhero movie in or superhero in decades. So the actor Ray Fisher, who's playing Cyborg, was like really interested in doing it, and it seems like such a shame. Like he did not get on well with Joss Whedon and did not get on well with the studio heads. So in the Joss Whedon cut of the film, they like cut about three-quarters of his scenes and completely changed the ending to sideline him.
I know, and he is okay. Wait, this is also the thing I just want to say. Okay, okay. The first quarter of the Snyder cut, I was sitting there being like, is this actually gonna be good? You know what I mean? Because it's like it's 4 hours, so it's obviously a bit slow to start, you know?
Hmm.
And the first quarter like has a couple like issues, like a couple of like pacing issues. I'm occasionally like, how did a character get there? Like they had 4 hours, they couldn't explain how a character got to this one location. Okay, whatever, fam. But by the end of that movie, like they completely rewrote the ending, and I was just like shook. I literally stood there and I was like, this ending makes the fact that they formed a league completely justified because every single person had an extremely important role to play and no one was sidelined. And Superman was not like the end all be all required key to save things, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So when you watch, so basically, Joss Whedon was brought in because the script, the film was almost 4 hours long. They wanted to cut down to 2 hours. They wanted it to be lighter, and he directed the Avengers. They basically said, "Oh, do that." So they spent like millions and millions on reshoots, and they ended up with a film with, paper thin characters that was confusing, that was rushed, that no one really cared about,
And they
and it
weren't
was
that funny.
yeah, exactly. And it wasn't funny. Like they added lots of kind of, quote unquote funny lines for the Flash, but because they relied on him so heavily, it ended up just being that he was overused and that he was really grating in the theatrical cut. Like I watched the theatrical cut on a plane 2 years after it came out and stopped watching after 25 minutes because I was like, this is boring. I'm not invested in anyone. I don't care.
Yeah. So there are like I will say there are like I actually love this. I like the longer I get away from having watched the Snyder Cut, the more I just remember how much I liked it. Like I have such like a fantastic view of that movie because like in my head it is a strong like 8.5 or like 9 out of 10, you know what I mean? Because it just hit everything that I needed for a DC movie. But like I was saying before, it did have its issues in the beginning. Like there definitely is like a weirdness to having a 4 hour movie, you know, because the pacing can always is like a bit off.
Yeah.
But just I just got so emotionally invested in the characters. They were so genuinely good in comparison. Like I came out of the Joss Whedon movie only basically liking Wonder Woman, but that was an easy sell because I liked the Wonder Woman movie, the one successful movie they made.
Yeah, exactly. They'd had one critical hit up until then.
But then
And
I
they're
remember,
basically coasting on that.
but then I remember that when I watched the Snyder cut, I think I told you this. I actually, it's not that I ended up liking Wonder Woman less, but I actually just ended up liking everyone else so much. Other
Hmm.
than like Batman, but I find Batman inherently boring. But that's a personal issue. That I was just like, Wonder Woman isn't even my fave anymore. Wonder Woman isn't even my fave. I don't know how that happened because I liked her so much.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, when the Justice League film came out, fans hated it, and a lot of fans said, "Oh, why like Joss Whedon ruined the tone of the film? Bring out like the original Zack Snyder cut." And for they ran this kind of Twitter campaign for years trying to release the Snyder cut, and Warner Brothers kept denying it. They said the Snyder cut doesn't really exist. And it was only last year that Warner Brothers finally relented, and they're like, "Fine, we will give you the Snyder cut, but it is not in some vault, ready to be released. It's going to take $70 million to make it, and it's not because they have to do a lot of reshoots. They only need to do 3 days shooting to, put the film together. It's because there's so much special effects work, and that this film was going to be 4 hours long, so there's loads of special effects shots they hadn't done yet, and it was going to be in a completely different aspect ratio. So whereas like the Joss Whedon film, like the frames are really kind of wide, like super wide, like cinema. With Zack Snyder, he wanted to do 4:3, so looking like an old TV or I guess more modern, an iPad. And he wanted that so it would look amazing on an IMAX screen. And everyone's like, "But you're releasing this for TV screens. Why you do by 4:3?" And he's like, "It's my director's vision. It's how I want it." So
I actually
so they
ended
had
up
to like redo
loving
every
it.
special effects shot again, like every shot of the film to fit the 4:3 ratio. So that's another reason it was so insanely expensive.
I did like. Oh, I remember um we were watching a video that was talking about like how the different aspect ratios make you see the film, and there
Mhm.
was someone who commented that it actually does make the heroes appear bigger. Like on a
Yeah.
wide shot, everyone appears small because you can see so much of the landscape. But the hero money shots really were very precise in the 4:3 ratio.
Yeah, I think the forward true ratio works really well. There's a scene where like Batman is on top of the roof and there's lightning in the background, and I think it's an homage to the Batman animated series opening. And he looks great in that. And then there's kind of the money shot at the end where like the team are all, together standing in the line, really proud. And like, yeah, they really dominate the frame. Like I think the 4:3 ratio works really well. And I actually don't like with everyone going super, super wide as the trend is at the moment. Like I'm like go like you're the human vision is closest to 4:3. Um, so I don't know why we don't do it more for films. I think it's really in like the 1950s that these like super widescreen productions became more common with these like biblical epics like the Ten
Mm.
Commandments, and we've kind of kept doing that since. But I don't think it's based in logic. I just think it's based in like let's bring out some gimmick, hope it sticks.
I think I have an issue with it because okay, well this is an Isadora thing, but I used to always show up early to movie theaters because I needed to get the perfect seat.
Oh yeah, it's like that time I watched you. You were at this showing of Leon the Professional, and I walked in and the cinema was completely empty except Isadora, who has her like seat exactly in the middle, like middle row, middle seat, being like, "Hi."
But you know why? Okay, you know why? It's because you need the perfect seat because you need to be back enough
Hmm.
where you can see the entire screen with your eyes without having
Mm.
to move it. Because in a wide screen, like if you get too close, and you have to look multiple. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
you change.
I did watch Avatar in 2009 from like the because it was such a hyped movie, and I came in at the last minute. I was at the very front and like the very left, so I spent the entire movie with my neck craned up and turned to the right, and I'm pretty sure I got like neck strain because it's a 3 hour movie.
But then if you sit all the way in the back, like you don't get as. I mean, there are some people that are very hard, like back row people, and I respect it because it's the best visual. Like you can see the whole thing very easily. But for me, I kind of struggle with it because I have poor vision. So I need to sit like as close as I can
I
while
do
still getting everything.
I do not get people who like sitting at the back of a film. I'm like, the screen looks so small. Like, you might as well watch the film from the sunken place. Like,
I don't know, Cormac. Like I kind of have like a respect for that because I'm like they came, they knew what they wanted. They want to be able to watch that whole thing like perfectly. They want to not have to move their eyes, and I respect that. But
I,
I
I
am a
think it's
blind
just they want to get to like first base with their girlfriend and they're 15, so they want to go to the back row. Like, that's the only reason I could think of.
if the middle's not available, I usually go back. But if I'm allowed to choose my seat, I come early and I count rows and then I try like multiple rows to like see like I get there very early so I can be like really
Wait,
annoying.
you actually count the rows to figure out where the middle seat is.
Yeah, and then I go to that one, but then if that one doesn't work, then I start slowly moving up or down until I get the perfect one. It's like an adjustment.
And how do you figure out where exactly is the middle? Do you count seat numbers? Or do you kind of position yourselves here in the middle when you're looking at the screen?
I can't see numbers. This is why I come early. It's a lot of work. Maximal like movie time experience. A lot of work, Cormac. Okay. And then it was really awkward because one time I went to go watch the first Star Trek movie for a second time. And I went in and I was really early. I was 40 minutes early. And one old man was seated, right? In the
in the
middle,
in the
in the
exact seat
exact
you
seat that I
wanted.
wanted. And then it was like kind of awkward because I was like walking around, like trying to like sort it out. But the row in front of him wasn't great, in my opinion. And the row behind him was also not perfect. So in a completely empty movie theater, I say hi to him and I sit down next to him.
Well, you sat down next, like, on the actual seat next to him
Because it was the perfect next seat!
in a completely empty movie theater. You
Yeah,
sat
because
down
they had
right, like, not even a seat in the middle, like
well,
literally
they had
right
a
next to
certain
this
amount
stranger.
of rows. I think they had like 30 or like 28 rows. So the two perfect seats would be seat 15 or 16. I think he was seated on like seat 15, so I just took 16 because they had the same impact.
I love it. It's amazing.
high school me was bold.
Seems unnecessary, but it's
High
very
school me
funny.
was very bold. Star Trek come out? Did the Star Trek one come out when I was in high school? I feel like it came out when I was in high school.
2009.
Oh nine. Okay, I was in high school. Yeah. Wait, no, no, I was in my first year of I was a young human who was quite bold.
Oh man. Okay,
You knew
so
exactly what you were getting.
back
You
to the
knew
film.
exactly what you were getting into when you started dating me because you'd already run into me in movie theaters and seen that I did this kind of BS.
Yeah. So back to the film. I think
You're never
so
getting over the fact that I did this.
I know. So one of the reasons I didn't like Batman versus Superman is I felt that characters had no real motivation, that they just went from place to place so that they could be in different fight scenes against each other, and you didn't really understand why characters were doing things. Um, what I didn't realize at the time is that it was because Warner Brothers had cut out half an hour of footage of character development, and the same thing happened here. Like my favorite character in this film was Alfred, because Alfred has some is played by Jeremy Irons, who's one of my favorite actors. Watch our Lolita review if you haven't seen it already. And he has some amazing scenes, and apparently he worked quite closely with writer Chris Terrio to get the lines just right. Um, so he has like this really funny scene with Wonder Woman where he's talking, where he's like micromanaging her making tea, and he has this like kind of father-son relationship with Bruce Wayne. Yeah, so I thought that this writer was a hack who didn't care about characters at all. Like this is the guy who wrote Batman vs Superman and wrote the Rise of Skywalker film as well. And I was like, he clearly doesn't care about developing characters. It's just about like, getting them in weird and wacky situations. But you watch the film and you realize how much of a character focus there is. Like the reason it works as an action film is that you're invested in the characters and you care about them. Like I really enjoyed the character of Cyclops. A character.
Cyborg.
Oh, what did I say? Oh.
Cyclops. That's really funny though. Keep that.
I
Go,
have
go.
Cyclops written here. Oh no. There we
Cyclops.
go. So yeah, maybe it's an X-Men crossover. That could be our next. I really like the character of Cyborg because um, it's a he's a character who is brought back to life, but he as a cyborg, but he views his new form as like a disability, and he feels ostracized, feels alienated, and feels resentful to his dad who brought him back to life. What do you think of his character?
I really liked his character. Also, here's the thing. Okay, I think I had an issue in the 2017 movie with them portraying him basically as almost like an angry black youth. I was like, that is just such a stereotype that has been beaten over again and again. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Because
Yeah,
the
yeah,
movie,
it's a cliche, like
yeah.
the angry black man.
And then, but in this movie, like in the beginning, I thought that's the way they were going. I was like, oh, are they not going to make Cyborg any more complex? It's just like an angry, like they're going to do this continuous portrayal of like an angry black like teenager. But no, like they look like they're going to do that for like the first 5 minutes. They completely swerve. Like he's given such like an emotional backstory and like an understanding of why he feels like resentful towards his father and why he feels like he had so much taken away from him. And what I really like in the movie, which I don't feel like they ever did in the 2017 movie, is they usually have him wearing like his college gear, and you realize like he's a high school guy. He was about to go to college. He was really smart. He had done so many kind things for other students around him. He really cared and he was kind and he was sweet. And then in one moment, like all of his dreams and aspirations are kind of taken away from him, which I do think is actually a really good example of like when you aren't born with a disability but you have an acquired disability from an accident and you suddenly feel like if you're not given the correct social support systems and you're just ignored, like suddenly your ability to go to college might be impacted or your life might be impacted or your ability to have romantic relationships with others might be impacted.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I think unless you have the proper psychological support, it's much harder to kind of like develop a disability like that, like to lose a limb or to lose sight or hearing, rather than to be born with it and never know any difference. Um, and I feel as well in the car accident where he's maimed, his mother is killed, and he blames his father for for her death. And I feel it ties in really well with kind of the central theme of grief in the film. Like the film is about Superman being dead and the world grieving for him, And Lois Lane grieving for her fiance, like, and
Oh wait, Lois was.
and Bruce Wayne having like a internalized guilt about the death of him. Is that what you're saying about Lois Lane?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say. Lois Lane was basically useless in the 2017 movie. She isn't necessarily that much better in this movie, but the couple of added scenes with her, like there's one scene where she's talking to, I'm gonna put in quotation marks, Martha. She's talking
Yeah.
to Martha. But I thought that was one of the most emotional scenes in the movie. Like where they're sitting down, they're talking about the complexities of death and grief and mourning and feeling like you lost a part of your life that you can't go back to. Because Lois was this high-powered, successful journalist, and going back to her office causes her trauma because
Yeah.
it is a reminder of the man of her fiance that she lost. Like everyone else in the world is grieving Superman, but she's grieving the very real relationship that she had.
Yeah. And she can't talk about it as well because her Superman's identity was never revealed. So she feels like doubly alone and isolated.
Yeah. And I just thought
Um,
the theme of isolation was so strong and impactful, particularly when you add in the cyborg storyline, or even just like Barry, the Flash. Like this isn't as heavily emphasized, but he's basically raising himself. Like he's like a 21, 22-year-old kid still raising himself because his father's in jail.
yeah, yeah, that's it. And like you really do care about the characters and you invest in them. I feel like that there's that great scene with Lois and Marta. I feel it's really undercut because of the the shot that comes just afterwards after Marta
I
leaves.
know that was unnecessary. That's like that was one of the things with the movie where I'm like, this could have been better.
Yeah, there's certain things that could have been improved where I'm
If you
like,
do a Cormac Duff cut, then you need to take out all of the scenes of with that.
yeah, I figured there is a sweet spot in the film. So the film is almost 4 hours. It's Snyder cut. I think there's a sweet spot in the film where it's about 3 hours and 20 minutes
You
long
should you should actually
because
do a Cormac Duff cut.
like one of the things I liked about it is they broke the film up into like 7 chunks, so you can watch it like a miniseries. So I think we watched it over 2 or 3 nights because it'd be very rough to watch over in one sitting. Um, but the pace is incredibly slow. Like the main character or the main villain Steppenwolf has to collect these 3 boxes, and I think he's at like 1.5 boxes, and I'm like, come on, come on. He's like, and he's speaking to his superior. He's like, I have almost got located the second box, and I was like, oh my God, what is taking you so long? Like,
Oh
there
yeah,
there is a sweet spot somewhere. I didn't mind it that much because of how they structured the film, but if I was in the cinema, I don't think I would have sat down for 4 hours in a row. Like I think The Irishman is pretty much the longest film I've sat through, and I think even that wasn't that long.
the Irishman felt a bit long. I'm not gonna lie. Like when we were sitting there, we were legit looking at each other, being like, "So when does this movie end exactly?" But yeah, they like I said, there were a couple of scenes where I just was like, was this really necessary? Like for example, the scene with Aquaman where they literally just have like these Swedish, Norwegian. I feel so bad that I don't know like what language they're speaking. They just have them chant for like a minute of chanting. I'm like, if I cut down this movie, it'd be 3 hours and 59 minutes, sir. That's already one solid minute off.
Yeah, I feel like yeah. So there's definitely is a sweet spot. You could see in the when you watch the difference between the Joss Whedon cut and the Snyder cut, they literally because Joss Whedon had to get it within 2 hours. The film is literally 120 minutes long, and they had to cut like you know microseconds out wherever they could. Like they cut out frames wherever they could because the studio pressure is so high. It's so have so stringent to cut the film into 2 hours, and the reason for that is because if you have a 2 hour movie showing in like a cinema screen, I mean, as opposed to a 4 hour movie, it means you can show like twice as many showings of per day. So hypothetically, you make twice as much money. And this is very much the conventional wisdom in the 1980s, 1990s that if you had an action movie, it needed to be 2 hours or less.
I do.
I don't think it holds up now because Titanic is over 3 hours long. Avengers Endgame over 3 hours long. Like Avatar over 3 hours long. Like the most successful movies of the last 20 plus years have been over 3 hours long.
You know what disappoints me and what I think we should reinstate in movies? A break in between the movies.
Yeah, it's
Like
an
they with
intermission.
old timey movies. They should literally have like an hour and a half of the movie intermission, like a 20-minute intermission. You can go get a snack and go to the bathroom, and then another hour and a half.
Yeah. It worked out great. When I was in, I went to see Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers in a small cinema in Castlebar, and they had an intermission in the film. They just created one where, when Aragorn is like attacked by that warg creature and falls off his horse in the river, you're like, oh no, Aragorn's dead, and they're like intermission, and it was great because it kind of leaves on the cliffhanger. They're between reels of the film, so it's like a natural time to change it, and it means that like you have a chance to like go out, get some snacks, go to the bathroom, and then come back in. Like we watched like I think the idea of the intermission comes from theater, and when we watch Funny Girl, there's like an intermission in that because it's based on a play that literally has the intermission after she sings "Don't Rain in My Parade." But it also gives as well as the audience chance to go like have perform bodily functions. It gives you a chance to kind of process what's happening so far, you
And
know,
chat with each other.
and chat with each other, yeah. And like, say what do you think is going to happen next? Like, I think they should reinstate it. And I know there's probably big pressure to keep films, keep films short, but I think cinema chains will be up for it because if it means they can sell you more stuff in those 15 minutes, why wouldn't they do it?
Well, the thing that I kind of hope that will happen is that now that a lot of cinemas, like basically since a lot of movie companies now are selling their movies like jointly to Netflix and stuff, you know what I mean? Now
Mhm.
that it's become a more comfortable thing to watch movies at home, because particularly like during COVID, we've all started watching movies at home. And I think that a lot of us have probably realized that it's a very comfortable thing. And
Mhm.
it'll take like a really big movie for us to willingly go out and venture into a cinema in the future, honestly.
Mhm.
And I think that the way they should get around that is that they should actually pivot towards the more old-fashioned theater kind of thing where they make it like an experience. Like you can go and you can order like your drink and you can also like order drinks for the intermission to just have them be there for you already and you can sit down and chat with your friends and get a snack like in 30 minutes in between, you know?
Yeah, I think that's the way it'll go. Like they used to have in 1960s, like we were saying before in our Funny Girl review, how musicals were like the big blockbusters of the era, and people would have like road shows, and the film would go on tour across different cities, like a Broadway show would. They had the intermissions. Like when we watched Funny Girl, they literally had an overture at the start where the screen is all black, but there's like orchestral music playing. I was
Yeah.
like, Isadora, is this part of the movie? And you were like, I don't know. So we'd like skip forward 3 minutes and the film actually started then and the credits
Yeah.
rolled.
Because the cut of Funny Girl I'd seen didn't have that, like the first cut I ever saw. But actually, I did kind of like it. It just was unexpected. But yeah, like look, I'm not saying the theater has to become exactly sorry, that movies need to become exactly like theater, but considering the fact that nowadays like a movie gets released and then a week later or same day it's on Netflix or Hulu or like HBO or something, I think that the way to get people out is to make it become like more of an affair.
Yeah, I think so. They need to make the differentiate the film going experience from Netflix,
Yeah.
and from streaming services. And people are pretty comfortable to watch things at home. Like everyone's watched, like we watched this at home. It was great, and because it was split up into different parts, it was like ideal for home viewing. So if we're able to put up movies into different parts for, longer movies like this for home viewing, why can't we split up into two parts for cinema viewing?
Yeah, that's just what I'm like. I just think that the 2 hour movie formula for me, but I'm also one of those people that I like long storylines. Like I like the chance to have things be very well developed, you know? Because I get annoyed when there's like anything that I don't get in the movie, if that makes sense. Like for example, in the Snyder cut, Diana goes into a temple that has just been like that people think has just been set on fire. There are police surrounding her, right?
Hmm.
Like there's supposed to be police surrounding the place. She gets in somehow to the middle and like picks up the arrow and like we had just seen it get like exploded and stuff and I'm like, okay, so no police like went to check that arrow, like no one stopped this very well dressed young lady in heels from like stepping into an active crime scene. And then she suddenly ends up like she jumps down somewhere, she ends up like in a cave and I'm like, there was no explanation of how you got in this cave, Diana.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, they really need some sort of transition shot for the cave. Like, maybe.
I know, and it was like, and the problem is that I'm one of those people that I don't go with the flow with a movie. If there is like a transitional like jump like that, then I will literally sit there for 5 minutes and be like, Why did you make that choice? I don't like that. Why did you do that? Like,
It's
I
like
think you
that's
have to pause the movie at that scene because I was just so annoyed. I was like,
it's like that scene in BoJack Horseman where he's like he's being a diva on the 90s set of the show, and he's like, I don't get this at all. I say, oh no, reading the script, I'm not wearing that sweater. Then the next scene is me wearing the sweater. It doesn't make any sense. We need a scene where it's me deciding to wear the sweater.
but I actually am one of those people where I need that scene. So
That's the whole point of the film. The joke is a jump cut.
yeah, I need that. I need that. Emotionally, and so that I'm not annoyed all the time. So yeah, my point is, I think that would be really great if we started making 3 hour movies a norm. I just think I need an intermission in between to be able to
Yeah,
fully enjoy it. Because sitting through something for 3 hours straight is like a bit of a hassle.
I think that's fair. Cool. Is there anything else you want to add about this movie?
Oh, it was really good. The ending is so amazing. I just enjoy so much how they completely just Jesus, the ending of the 2017 movie was so bad and this ending was so good. I was legit shook. I was like, Cormac, this might be the most creative ending to a superhero movie that I have seen in ages, actually.
Yeah, so one of the things I really appreciated about it is in the theatrical cut, they've refilmed most of the ending, and the film is basically, oh, it's nice to work together as a team, but really you just need one guy who's super powerful and is Superman,
Superman.
and he is going to beat up the bad guy because the rest of you failed. So yeah, you just need one strong friend, and the rest of you can kind of wing it, be in the backseat. Um, and like they did this where there's literally scenes in the Joss Whedon cut where they'll have photoshopped out, you know, members of the Justice League. There's like a scene where Wonder Woman is there, and in the Joss Whedon version, they photoshopped out Aquaman and Cyclops from the backgrounds. Um,
So it's more like they're fighting them individually than actually
yeah,
fighting them as a team, which is such a weird choice.
yeah. The whole point is that every time that there's these three mother boxes, every time that people have tried to defend them alone, whether they're like the Wonder Woman people, the Aquaman people, or humans on Earth, they have failed. So it's only by like combining together and working as a team that they succeed. And I like that our two like new characters, two main characters, are like the most central elements. Like the Flash and Cyborg are needed to uh, as well as
Save the
Superman.
day. They
Yeah,
save the day.
exactly, to save the day. And like the climactic moments of the film is like Cyborg coming to terms with his loss and realizing that he's not alone. He's a member of a team. I'm like, that's a really touching ending, rather than just like this guy is super strong. He's going to beat up the bad guy.
Boop, boop, boop. I'm Superman.
Yeah, and also the Steppenwolf's character design looked cool. He had like all these. They changed it so that his armor is more pointy and shiny, and they gave him some sort of character development as well, so he wasn't completely two dimensional. And I actually felt bad for him when he got killed at the end. I'm like, he doesn't seem like such a bad guy. Like, whereas the theatrical version he was very much just a 2D generic villain.
Oh yeah, the ending was just so badass with Wonder Woman cutting off his head. Sorry, spoiler, whatever. It was so cool. So good.
Nice. Perfect. So flop or sorry, bop or
Flop.
what?
Bop or flop.
Bop or
You
flop? Didn't we do bop or scam?
Oh, whoops. Bop or flop would have been way better. Why have we been doing bop or scam this whole time?
Because they're all flops, technically. They all lost money. Like this movie still lost money.
Ah, such a bop though, such a hard bop. It's like a bop to the top. Slip and
Yeah.
slide and ride that rhythm.
Okay. This was formerly a in its theatrical version a scam that has been turned into a bop. So much so that I want to watch Batman vs Superman, the director's cut. We
We
might
need
review
to
that at
do
some
that. We
stage.
need to do that.
Yeah, and we should review other director's cuts. Like famously, Kingdom of Heaven director's cut is made a huge difference to the quality of the film.
Okay, that sounds great. Boop, boop, boop.
Okay, perfect. So bye everyone. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Bye
Bye.
bye.